Hello, I am Dr. Weaver, and I'm going to be your guide as we go through the Thematic Unit Review for Milestone 2, Assignment 6.2. In Assignment 6.2, you will begin by placing the traditional Southern New Hampshire University cover page, followed by the Thematic Unit cover page, and then Stage 1. This is everything that you did in Milestone 1, sections A through I. Then the new section for this assignment, Stage 2. You are only required to go through sections A through G. In Stage 2, you are going to determine acceptable evidence. You are going to answer the question, what evidence will show that students understand? The first section, letter A, is about the performance task. You are to create a performance task to assess the key knowledge and skills of this unit. The performance task should be a way for your students to demonstrate understanding using higher level thinking skills and taking into consideration all the multiple intelligences of your students. The performance task is a summative assessment. Some examples would be projects, using those higher order thinking skills and reflecting the multiple intelligences. Now remember, in this section, you need to add research to support your reason for using this assessment. This is the example for Section A, Performance Task. You will notice that the author lets us know in the very first sentence what she will be discussing. She says, I have chosen an authentic performance-based task to be used as a summative assessment. So we are not only going to know about the summative, but we already know that it's authentic and performance-based. It's vital that teachers in the 21st century provide as many authentic experiences as possible in their classroom, and especially with assessments. Now you will notice the next thing she does is that she quotes a research statement and then cites it according to APA style. She goes on to describe the assessment and why she believes that this will authentically help students to meet all of the goals of this unit. You may have student instructions or perhaps a writing prompt or some other performance task information that you want to include with your unit. This should go in the appendices, and then you should put a statement at the end that indicates that you did this. You can see that this author said the performance task can be found in Appendix A. The next area in Stage 2 is B, Other Evidence. In this section, please describe the other evidence that needs to be collected in light of the student performance in Stage 1. This section is for formative assessments used in this unit. This is not to be just a list. Again, it is to be a narrative description. You might include a description of the quizzes or the skill check or the writing prompt you're going to use. Remember to add research to support at least one of these formative assessments. Here is an example of Section B, Other Evidence. You see that at the beginning, she has given an overview of the different types of assessments. She has cited research to support her ideas, and then she gives a list. Now this is not just a list, it also gives details. Like the first one, a diagnostic pretest given at the start of the unit. This assessment informs the teacher and student of prior knowledge, etc., etc. So she explains each one. Now, later on, she just puts homework assignments because we all know what a homework assignment is. So please make sure that anything that is written in this section could be understood by a parent. You want this to be a complete and thorough description. This is a continuation of section B, and if you notice, the student has listed another performance task. Sometimes you will have performance tasks beyond the authentic example of the summative at the very beginning. It's very important that you place that summative information here. And as you can see, she gave a very brief description. But it's important to know because this is using some technology, and that's why she has included it here. Moving forward, section C asks the question, what evidence will show that students understand? This is the student's self-assessment and reflection. Here you are going to design and list how students assess and reflect on their own work and understanding. Please make sure you list alternative ways your differentiated learners will reflect on their own work. Here is an example of section C. Please notice that right in the opening sentence, she defines what we're going to read about in that paragraph. This is excellent writing. She begins, formative assessments not only benefit me, the teacher, but help to create self-directed learners. Then she describes how she will allow and encourage her students to reflect. Please look down in the center of the paragraph where she specifically mentions her ELL students and how they may benefit from the use of visual aids and additional sentence frames to complete their reflection. This is exactly what we need in section C. Now we move into the blueprint section, and I know that some of you found this a little disconcerting when you were looking through the announcements, so let's delve into this. The question you're going to answer is, what understandings or goals will be assessed through this task? You are to formulate the understandings or goals that will be assessed through the performance task. Now that's important. Remember, the performance task is the summative. So we're going to be discussing all of the understandings or goals that are related to this performance task or summative assessment. Here you should list the items that will be measured in the performance assessment. Do not place the rubric here. You are going to put the rubric for the summative in the appendices and cite it here. As the example says, see Appendix A. This is an example of Section D, the blueprint goals. Please notice that this is a short paragraph. You might want to extend your paragraph, but it should not be just a list of the standards as you placed in Stage 1. This is to be an overall view. You can see what she says throughout this unit. Students will develop a deeper understanding of expressions and equations and how they can be applied to real-world context. It is intended to give students the foundational groundwork needed for algebra. This is important for you to understand that she has a very narrow scope of this particular unit. Some of you involve 2 or 3 different subjects. So everything will need to be mentioned here. It will be reflective of what your performance task entails. And then you see that she included her rubric by saying, see Appendix B for morning walk rubric. This is Section E, Blueprint Criteria. You will answer the question, with what criteria will student products and performances be evaluated? Student products and performances are simply anything in the classroom that you have assessed or evaluated. There will always be criteria that you will use to assess a student, and that's what we want listed here. Not in rubric form, but in a list or narrative form. Remember that the products and performances could be homework, it could be activities within the classroom like a small group assignment where you gave them feedback. Make sure that you list the items that will be measured in these products and performances. It is optional that you place the rubrics from the formatives in the appendices. If you do, please cite them here at the end of the criteria for each student product. This is an example for Section E, Blueprint Criteria. You'll notice that the author starts with a statement. Students will be scored using a rubric on the following tasks, and then she lists the criteria. This is not a rubric, this is just a list of what the teacher will be looking for in each of the products or the performances. And then she supports the ideas of using this particular criteria with a research statement. She describes a little bit more about the rubric, giving some information about it. Now remember, this is to be criteria that you will use for the entire unit. Now we come to the final section of the blueprints. This is the Blueprint Products and Performance section F. The question you are to answer: what student products and performances will provide evidence of desired understandings? Now that you know what you will assess, you're supposed to describe the student products and performances that will provide the evidence of the criteria you listed. And remember to add research to support your reason for using at least one of these student products. This is the example for Section F, Blueprint Products and Performances. You will notice that the author has begun this particular paragraph with a research quote, and she has cited it correctly according to APA style. Then she goes on to speak about the performance task and how this will measure the performances in the unit. Now you might ask, well, why is she talking about just the performance task? This particular author felt like because it was a summative, it covered everything that was necessary to complete and reach the goals of this unit. That is acceptable, or you may consider all of the formatives and the summatives when you write about the blueprint products and performances. That'll be your choice. Moving on, we are at Section G, Evaluation of Technology. You are to answer the question, what technology options are acceptable to demonstrate evidence of desired understandings? You are going to evaluate possible instructional technology options that you could use with assessments. This is not a repeat of the different technologies that you listed in Stage 1. These are specifically to be used in an assessment category. So you'll answer the question, what type of technology will students use in the assessment process? Think about your special needs students. Many of them have special equipment or different types of software they can use, and you could mention that. If they have an IEP that specifies the use of this technology, you need to include that too. And remember, in this section, add research to support your reason for using this technology. This is an example of Section G, Evaluation of Technology. Notice that this student's performance task has options for students, and she discusses some of her students' struggles with writing and decides that she thought options would allow her students to be successful. These will include some technology, and she lists here what technology and how this technology is supported by research. Make sure that you look at your student population that you created and which one of your students, maybe more than one, will need technology to help them be able to pass the assessment. This is a discussion about Section H, Differentiated Acceptable Evidence. I want to remind you that Section H is not due in Assignment 6.2, but it will be due in the final project 9.2. So I wanted to include it in this discussion. In Section H, you will answer the question, how will you modify the determined acceptable evidence to meet the needs of all students in your classroom based upon your classroom profile? This might mean adjusting the task, the assessment, or the evaluation criteria to meet the needs of individual students. And you do need to have research to support your reason for what you adjusted. Here is an example of Section H, Differentiated Acceptable Evidence. Another good transition sentence. I believe when differentiating assessment, the overall objectives should remain the same, etc., etc. This tells us exactly what we're going to learn about in this paragraph. And you will notice that she does correctly cite a research statement. Please notice that she addresses her students specifically in this area. This is not to be general. This is so specific about the students in your classroom. This is Section I, Reflection on Acceptable Evidence. And remember that this is not due in 6.2, but will be due in the final project. You are to answer this question in Section I. How will you modify the determined acceptable evidence based on student achievement? And once again, like in Stage 1, you are to use the classroom scenario results located in the thematic unit template. This is the example for Section I, Reflection on Acceptable Evidence. Notice, as you did in Stage 1, this student in Stage 2 spoke about the results. Based on the results from the assessment, there was one ELL student, etc., etc. So please do this again. But now you're going to talk about how she performed on the assessment. Look at the third sentence. During student conferences, I discussed with the ELL student that her explanation and use of vocabulary was an area of weakness. This student lost points because her explanation did not include appropriate terms and/or use terms in an appropriate manner. That's the problem. Here's the solution. To help this student build mathematical vocabulary and strengthen her explanation, I will be providing additional sentence frames and a word bank. So this is an example of the type of rhetoric that needs to be in this section. And finally, we come to the reference list. Remember that this is a cumulative list that will include everything that you have cited from the cover page to Stage 1 and now through Stage 2. And each resource must be aligned with APA style. As you glance at her reference list, I hope you will use this as an example of how your reference list should look. I hope you have found this video helpful. If you have any other questions not covered here, please contact me. I'm available by email or telephone, or we can even schedule a chat. I'm interested in helping you be successful on Stage 2 of your thematic unit. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great day.